And so really at the core of my work is understanding not only how companies use technology, but also how companies use technology as people. How does it change what they do? How does their organization move and adapt? And how come two companies can have the same opportunity, the same technology, the same resources, the same data, and see different amounts of success in what they do? And so that's what I want to share with you today. I don't want to share with you necessarily the answers as much as I want to share with you the stories to help you build the intuition as to how great companies, and I've had the privilege of working with more than, right now, 3,100 companies in 42 countries, how they make great decisions and what separates those organizations from others that have the same opportunity and the same potential and sometimes even the same smart people and the very human attributes of those. Now, before we go too far into it, I do need to take a step back, which is where actually my work began. I never came into this field saying, I want to study organizations. Look, I work in marketing. Let's be honest. My job is to get people to click on pictures and to buy things. And so a lot of my research actually started with this. And I have to give people a requisite disclaimer. I see the group here is probably mixed evenly, men and women. OK. One of the things I was looking at was somebody buying a product online. I wanted to know what that journey looked like. How many interactions, how many touch points did they have before they decided to make that decision? And I'll show you what that journey looks like. 263 interactions with the company before deciding to make a decision and do business with that company. Now, they weren't buying a car. They weren't taking out a loan. This was a woman buying a pair of shoes. Now, that is where I stop commenting on shoe buying behavior. That is a much different presentation. But what I will tell you, because people often ask, is it was about a $450 pair of shoes. Yes, to the ladies, it was a nice pair of shoes. I don't understand it. I have 6 pairs. My wife has 60. But this was her story. Coming back nearly 18 times every day for 2 weeks before she decided to buy those shoes. And in fact, just an odd bit of trivia, interacted with that company so many times that the cost that they spent acquiring her as a customer far outweighed the profit margins on those shoes. Now, this is a marketing problem, but it's something very central to a lot of businesses, which is how do they allocate value? Who's responsible for creating value for our organization? And that was actually the first question that I was handed in my career nearly 15 years ago. They said, can you help us sort this out? Now, you can do a lot with the math, but I decided just to talk to companies. Now, I'll tell you about the first company I spoke to about this that had this type of problem. What's driving our business forward? And I'll give you a little context. I can't tell you their name, but I can promise you everyone in the room has heard of their brand, is likely a customer of that company. But from a technology side, they had the most developed technology stack I had ever seen. All of the latest technology that you could find, they adopted it 6 months before it even hit the public market. They had more money than they knew what to do with, a data science team that even today is unmatched in their capabilities, and they had almost no organizational silos to speak of. The CMO would talk to the CFO, the board was in on everything. And so I sat down with their executives and I said, how are you approaching this very real problem? How do you allocate and figure out what's driving your business? And they had a very rational approach, and they said, look, we need to understand this, and so here's what we're going to do. Over the next 6 months, we're going to hire 20 or 30 people with advanced degrees, the best we can find in the market, the PhDs, the masters in computer science and engineering and mathematics. We're going to give them as much as they need in artificial intelligence and machine learning, as much data as they need, and then we're going to solve this problem. And so we will know every touch point, every customer, what drove their decision, and we will make everything in real time. We had 30 minutes for a discussion. We were done in 5 because I had nothing to add. This is a company that's doing everything right. You have the data, you have the technology, everybody's aligned to the problem. What else is there? And I'm also second-guessing my career choices. I was like, I want to work with that company that has everything. A couple weeks later, I had to meet with one of their competitors. So it was where this first company was top of the market. This company was about 5th or 6th. They didn't have the resources, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the technology, but they had this very same problem that we're looking at. And so as part of this, I had to interview the executives. I said, okay, how are you approaching this problem? And he looked at me and he kind of leans back in his chair, a funny guy. And he said, we're just going to move money from the bottom of this funnel all the way to the top, and we're going to see what happens. It's like, I think 20% makes sense. And I was like, based on what? And he's like, gut feeling. And you get that. A lot of decisions in my world are made by gut, about half of them. And so I pushed him. I said, where's the data? Where's the rigor of this? And he used a very, very interesting form of language. He's like, well, let me tell you my hypothesis. He's like, all the data that we've seen says that the way we're allocating today is wrong. That we're giving all this credit to what happened at the very end. And we see a lot of data that says if we move our allocation slightly to other activities, it doesn't matter, then we should be in a better place than we were before. And so our hypothesis is that simply by doing something different than what we're doing today, we'll make more money. It's like we don't need to be perfect with this. We just need to be slightly better. Now, as you get to know me, you'll know I have a terrible poker face, and so he called me on it. I tend to think things inside. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And then he calls me out, and he's like, you think I'm an idiot? And I was like, no, you spend a lot of money with us. I have to love you. But he's like, let me tell you the other part of it. He's like, we look at job postings. We like to know where our competitors are investing, and we know that our largest competitor right now is staffing up heavily in this space. Investments that we can't match in people or technology. We're not even close. We have maybe 1/10 of the money they do for this problem. But here's our other hypothesis. It's going to take them 6-12 months to hire these people. It's going to take them another 12 months to bring them on board, get them caught up with the organization, another 6 months to build their AI-driven technology solution, if they're lucky, and then 6 months again to test it and roll it out into the market. Which means we have 24 months at least to do something that our competitors cannot. We have 24 months to advance and serve our customers in a different way. We have a 24-month window of being a better company while the other one is still searching for their solution. He's like, and what we're going to do is something else. He's like, we're going to take a little bit of that money we saved. By not throwing all that money into people and technology, we're going to put it into a savings account or some low-risk mutual fund. And then if we find in 2 years that our closest competition solved this problem with all their massive investments, we're going to reach into that account, we're going to pull out some of that money, and we're going to make a really nice offer to whoever's heading up data science on their side to come over and tell us what the answer is. Until then, we're just going to test and we're going to move. We're going to do what we can with the technology that we have. Now, what I love about this is I was able to watch both companies over time. The second company, the one that didn't have the resources, but had the ambition to try something new and do something different with their technology, even if it was imperfect, moved from that 5th position to now they are the leader in the market. That company that was number 1, they have dropped now to number 7 as of this morning. They're on their 3rd CMO. And I asked them, I said, how's this problem going? It's been several years. And they said, well, we actually have a new strategy because we brought in some new leadership. I said, well, what are you doing? And they said, well, we're going to hire a whole bunch of data scientists to build us a perfect model to solve this problem. That organizational friction being very real. And that company will fall further down. And it wasn't that the first company had the right answer. But it was one of the biggest things that I learned is that those companies don't look for the right answer. What they do is they look at experimentation, trying different things as their advantage with technology. They never want to solve a problem. And so they want to do, what they want to do is start and say, what are all the opportunities that I could pursue? And these companies use very specific language. I'm going to generalize it for you in a second. But when you talk to those companies, say, how do you organize your initiatives? How do you organize your technology? How do you compete? They generally have 4 very similar questions. They start with, well, what is the hypothesis? Past the hypothesis, what data do we have to support it? How would we test it? And how would we act? Now, I purposely simplify these questions to you because if they're any longer, nobody in your organization will remember or use them. But there's a certain brilliance behind it with the hypothesis. The company's not asking if it's right. They're just saying it's an idea. Over the course of the next day, day and a half, you're going to get a lot of ideas. And it's not to judge to say we want to do this or not do it, but the companies write it down anyways. In most organizations, those ideas are filtered out. When we talk to analysts and we say, how hard is it to get your idea surfaced up in your organization? They say it's damn near impossible. And so the smart organizations are saying, we're going to take every idea that we get from our customers, from our partners, from our competitors, put it on a spreadsheet as a single column. Here are all the things we could do. And the second question is, well, we need to order these. Well, what data do we have to support these? Is it somebody's intuition? That's fine. Maybe we need more technology. We need more data before we can answer it. Maybe it's a published, peer-reviewed academic study. There's no right answer. It just allows us to prioritize and to say, how close are we to getting to a place where we could do something? And if we're not there, do we have the ability to test? It could be a great opportunity. It could be right in front of you, but if it costs millions of dollars to go into a new market or open up a new location or deploy technology, that opportunity goes further on the list. And then that question all the way at the end is probably the most important one we ask. Before doing anything, before adopting new technology, before using more data, before launching a new product, before we go down this path, do we have alignment as an organization as how we're going to act? Oftentimes, companies leave this for the end. They say, we'll let the results speak for themselves. I'll give you an example out of education. A couple years ago, I was tasked to figure out how much money should be left between two different marketing programs, display ads or search advertising. It took us about 3 months to sort out that answer, and the conclusion was if they moved a little bit of money from one bucket to the next, their profitability goes up by double digits. No additional money, just moving the allocation. Easy. Present the data to the CMO. What I didn't anticipate, and I should have, was that for one team, it meant smaller budgets. For one team, it meant that they couldn't claim as much credit for what their team was doing to the rest of the organization. It made hiring, it made promotions harder, and that person suddenly became a detractor to that program. And they did a very corporate thing. They spent $750,000 hiring a very expensive consultancy, they began with the letter M, to do a research study that said, this is why my work is undervalued. And at the end of the day, the poor board had two studies. One that said, put more money here. The other study said, take money away. And everyone collectively looked at the board, and the chairman was like, well, I guess the data is inconclusive. We're not going to do anything. Whenever there's transformation, especially now in an age of AI, some functions will be disrupted in your organizations. Some people will win. They'll have more resources, more time, more attention. They're going to grow their business. Others will lose. And the earlier you can get in front of that, the better you'll be. And so companies simply organize it in this way to say, these are all the levers that we can pull on. All the things we could do with technology, that we can do with our customers, that we can do with our data, and to say, this is how we're going to organize these efforts. Now, one last thing I have to mention about this, because this test-driven idea is influential in major technology companies, entrepreneurial firms. I did introduce it to one company, and I felt bad about this, because they took this message to heart. They said, yes, we want to run more tests. And I said, this is fantastic. Let's do more of this. And they said, can we have more ideas? And I said, yes, I have thousands. I was like, can you narrow it down for me? What kind of tests do you want? What type of opportunities can I give you? And they said, anything that we're likely to get a positive result from. And I said, this is the antithesis of a test. Why are you testing something if you know the answers? And they say, well, here's the way it works in our organization. And I asked their permission, can I share this process with you? They said, when we get an idea, we have to convince our boss, our boss's boss, our boss's boss's boss, that this should be run. We have to convince someone to give us money from something they're going to spend on something else to my test. We have to convince engineering it has to be part of a sprint. PR has to be involved for some reason. Legal has to sign off on what we're changing on our homepage. And if we get to the end and the test doesn't work, then everybody looks back at us and says, look at what we could have done with this money someplace else. And then we lose our seat at the table. We will be known as a person, oh, remember that test you recommended? We lost $50,000 on that test. And so they're like, it's easier for us. It gives us job security if we only surface the things we know that will work. And then our executives feel great because then they go on stage at conferences and they say, we have a test-driven culture and everything's great because they never see a failure, when in reality we're slowing everything down by 12 to 18 months just so they can feel that way. So we spent a lot of time, and I want to share with you just one quick way around it, culturally, something you can do if you want to tap into this. Set the right incentives for people. Now, what does that mean? Easiest way to do it. If you're using that spreadsheet and people in your organization are submitting to it, recognize them before the test is ever run. If somebody sees a great hypothesis backed by data, they have a testing plan to move it forward, and the organization is aligned as to how they would act, they should not know the answer. When companies celebrate people on stage and they say, "Congratulations, this team found this great opportunity," it's luck at that point. If they know the answer, that test should never be run. That idea should just be implemented. As soon as you start recognizing people in your organization for great ideas and absolving them of the responsibility and saying, "This doesn't need to be perfect. This doesn't need to work. This is on us. This is on us as leaders to take this the rest of the way," you unlock the value of everything you've already built. People will be able to look at your programs, your platforms, your data, and say, "These are the things that I see in it." And the only thing you have to look at is if you have that spreadsheet, is going back through it and saying, how quickly are we moving through this list? What are the roadblocks that I can remove for you? Is it budget? Is it agreement? What can we do? Because otherwise, if I'm hiring great people and implementing great technology, we'll never move forward unless we can make different decisions on it.